we have a very interesting topic lined up. And before I start, I think I would like to talk a bit about CHRMP. CHRMP stands for Certified Human Resource Management Professional. CHRMP is a premier HR certification in field of human resource management, which is globally recognized. CHRP also is a competency-based certification, which makes it stand apart from other certifications. We are talking about 5,600 test centers in close to 190 countries. We are talking about our certification partner being Pearson View, and we are talking about more than 10,000 strong alumni base. My name is Animesh. I have 17 years of work experience in human resource management. I've consulted with various organizations in terms of helping them set up their analytics and HR processes. Largely, I work with Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies in terms of setting up analytics and also looking at solving problems using analytics. We also work closely with learning and development departments of various organizations in terms of setting the whole thing up, right? I would be the chief facilitator for the webinar today. I also head the training and certification vertical for CHRMP in Asia Pacific. Now, when we talk about topic of the day, I would want to promise something to all of you who are listening. After this webinar, I would ensure that you will understand impact on business that HR analytics has. Very, very important, guys, right? So when I say that by end of this webinar, you will have a complete understanding of what HR analytics does to business. It's a big promise, and I would make sure that I live up to this promise with the value that I add for you in next 1 hour. I do understand that in this fast-moving world, giving 1 hour of your time is a little difficult, but give this across, and I'm sure that you will not regret, because analytics is such a wonderful field, and it takes little time to build understanding, and I need that time from you to go about learning some very interesting concepts associated, right? Now, when we talk about analytics, we are talking about how analytics is impacting the business. Again, a very important discussion, right? What is the impact that HR analytics has in terms of business? And as I start this topic, I think I would first like to start by bursting some myths about HR analytics, which is very, very important. In fact, a lot of times when I'm part of these conferences, I'm interacting with different folks, I'm interacting with different people. I come across a lot of people who come and ask me that, okay, HR analytics is this, that. There is a lot of misconception, a lot of perception that people have, which they go wrong on. And I want to burst those myths as I start with this certificate, with this topic. I think the first myth that I want to burst about HR analytics is that HR analytics is for people who are good with mathematics, right? This is a very, very big myth. And a lot of times, the moment analytics comes into picture, we as HR professionals, we start wondering, oh, must be a lot of analytical skills and a lot of skills related with logical ability, algorithm, etc. would be needed. I would like to burst this myth saying that no, analytics require maths. However, it doesn't require maths to the level of calculus or integration or differentiation or one or the other thing. We are talking about basic mathematics. We are talking about this arithmetic, which is addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, etc. Largely a bit of ratios, a little bit of probability maybe, but largely when we talk about HR analytics, you don't need to be an expert in maths to know HR analytics. The second thing, which is very, very important for us to understand, and another myth to burst, is that it is not for people who are good with programming. So a lot of people wonder that, you need to be good with programming to be good with HR analytics, and that's not necessarily true, right? In fact, that's not true, because when HR analytics started about 10-15 years back, when big organizations started investing in human resource analytics, earlier it was largely sales analytics and marketing analytics that they were doing, and customer relation analytics that they were doing, because that was directly linked with revenues. But when they started doing HR analytics, then they realized that a lot of operation folks who were good with programming did do a good job in terms of crunching and using algorithm, etc. But they missed on this key element of human element while doing this analytics. So it was just not giving the right results, and that's why this whole idea of HR analytics came to to an HR as a department, and analytics as a function, where it started evolving. And HRs were not very good with mathematics. I mean, a lot of them are, a lot of them are not, but and also definitely not very good with programming. So if you feel that analytics is something for programming, you are mistaken, because what we need here is representation tools, maybe Tableau or Power BI. But you don't need Java, .NET, you don't need programming skills to be a good HR analytics. And that is very, very certain. And that is something which is certainly a myth, that you need programming. The third myth that we need to go about bursting is HR analytics is important, but it's not relevant to my current HR role. So a lot of times while working, when we are professionals, we are talking about seeing job as one bit of our life. And once office is over, I mean, we do think about work, it doesn't necessarily be, but we are largely absorbed by what's happening around us, and people who and colleagues and etc. However, when you do good career planning, I think it's important to step back and look at the larger picture of things, of how things are moving. And a lot of times what is not the truth today does not mean it's not the truth. So understand that analytics is here, analytics has come, analytics will be getting associated with a lot of roles. It is getting associated with a lot of HR roles. We are talking about increased amount of talent acquisition analytics. We are talking about a lot of performance management analytics. We are talking about talent developmental analytics, or L&D analytics, like never before. We are talking about compensation analytics being done now. We are talking about business cases being built. We are talking about solutions to HR and people related problems that is being driven through HR analytics. So when we talk about HR analytics, we are talking about almost all roles, whether it is in area of recruitment or performance or employee engagement or compensation or personal management. Analytics would be an X factor, and especially after this COVID situation, especially after the world looking at digital transformation, and the world looking at, moving a lot of things otherwise online, and a lot of other things that would change post COVID situation. I think this need would be much, much more, right? In fact, pre-COVID, the sense was that 7 out of 10 roles in HR would need some amount of analytical knowledge by 2025. I now see it happening much sooner, because this is digital transformation, and this whole idea of analytics giving more inputs and solving problems for business, providing solution, having a consultative approach is something that's going to drive analytics largely. So again, don't think that if you are doing X in HR, that would not need analytics. It would. In fact, it may not need to the role that you are currently in. It may not be true to the company that you are currently in, but either the norms in the organizations would change, or you would lack getting much better organization if you lack with analytical knowledge. And that is a truth that would apply to 7 out of 10, 70% jobs in times to come, right? So that is again another myth that we need to bust, right? Now I want to ask a quick question before we start, and this question is for all of you. Whom would you hire? And I want everyone to answer this, right? So it would just need a bit of hand movement and typing in the chat box. Whom would you hire for the role of a sales executive? Would you hire an extrovert, or would you hire an introvert? Guys, quickly, please answer in the chat box. Whom would you hire for a sales executive, whether an extrovert or an introvert? Great. Okay. I can see in, okay, extrovert. Great. Guru Murthy says extrovert. There are a lot of answers in the Q&A box also coming in. So yes, a lot of times that is what we feel. Why do we think that uh, you need to hire an extrovert for a sales executive role? Obviously, because when you say an extrovert, you are talking about a person who is confidently communicating and interacting, etc. And by gut, this is the first thing we think of, isn't it? That let's hire an extrovert for a sales executive role. However, uh, did we even think, right? Because what analytics says is that don't use your gut. In fact, it doesn't really say that don't use your gut, but it says that if you want to use your gut, back it with data, right? So if you want to use your feeling of something, of that, whether this is true or this is not true, always back it up with data, because when you back it up with data, then the reality may be different. And a lot of HRs make this mistake, that they immediately come to a conclusion that maybe extroverts are good or introverts are good. So we don't know, right? We really don't know. In fact, when for a consulting sales role, not a product sales role, for a consulting sales role, um, uh, when a survey was done of how people were hired for extroverts and introverts, and when the extrovert data was further broken down, you got to know that 57% extroverts who were hired for the sales role were below par performance, 29% had average performance, and only 14% uh, led to the job success, which is so different from what we perceive that extroverts can do. Because a lot of times communication, I'm not saying that extroverts would always produce this data, but this is specific for one role. This may change with another role, right? So we have to understand that whenever we are being given a problem, it's always important to step back and look at something. For example, the right thing to do would be first ask, what is this sales role? And when we say what is the sales role, we have to dig deeper into it. Is it a consulting role? Does it involve a lot of listening? Does it involve what are the skills that it needs? When you say solution selling, what is the cost of the entire proposition that we are looking at? Is it a high-end sale or it's a low-end sale? Whom are we selling at, right? Because a lot of times maybe a introverted style of listening to customer and getting more information from customer can be helpful in selling. In fact, a lot of times you will trust a person maybe in sales who would probably listen more and talk less rather than talk more and not listen, right? So you don't, and I'm not saying that extroverts don't listen, but what I'm trying to tell you is that we cannot take gut-based decisions. We have to step back, analyze, create, map, look at what has happened before, then look at what can happen next, and then go about making a decision. Very, very important for us, guys, that we make decisions based on data, we make decision based on evidence, and we refrain for making decisions based on uh, based on what we feel, right? Now, with this, I think let me come to this very, very interesting part where I want to differentiate analysis with analytics. And a lot of times, again, this happens, right? When I'm interacting with folks, they will come and they will tell me that, okay, analysis, HR analysis, right? Uh, in fact, okay, so analysis is all about reporting. They come and tell you that you go reporting what has happened, etc. Right? But there is huge difference between what analysis is and what analytics is, right? So when we talk about analysis and analytics, we are talking about the approach. We are talking about the outlook, because analysis is largely looking at the past data. It is having a historical view of what has happened. Whereas analytics is looking forward. It is looking at predicting what can happen next, right? So it is looking at telling uh, what the future largely, right? It is interacting with analysis, right? It is interacting in analysis because a lot of times, I mean, there are famous sayings, right? You say that history repeats itself, so does data, so does behavior. As human beings, what makes us angry now, what makes us jealous now, what makes us excited now, what makes us happy now, what makes us sad now, the chances are the same thing can make us angry, jealous, happy, sad, etc. The next time as well, right? So there is pattern involved, right? So analytics does look at analysis to know the why, to go about predicting the result. But these are two different approaches. In fact, in the journey of HR analytics, analysis is different and analytics is different. And we can understand this better in few slides from now when I talk about the maturity model that we use for HR analytics, right? Uh, and when I say HR analytics, largely the analytical journey that we are talking about in HR analysis has 4 steps, right? Descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. These are 4 very important steps that we are talking about when we talk about analysis maturity model. And if we just dig a little deeper into this, we will understand that descriptive uh, analysis or statistics is about knowing what has happened, right? It is looking behind, looking historically, and it wants to know what has happened, right? So you look at something that has happened, you look at the data points, you go about collecting the data, and then you look at expanding it in terms of creating an understanding of what exactly happened, right? The next step again is an analysis step, not analytics step. It is analysis step where you are now figuring out why it happened. So when we say diagnostic statistics, we are talking about analysis of what happened data to get deeper into it and zero down on a reason of why it happened. It's just like going to a doctor, right? Hopefully nobody goes to a doctor right now with what's happening across the globe, and everybody stays safe. And that's my wishes. But when we talk about what happened and why it happened, we are talking about when we go to a doctor and when we see, first thing the doctor does is ask a lot of questions. He or she goes about asking us, okay, what are you feeling? How long you've been feeling this? Is there fever? Is there cough? Is there cold? Is there how's your stomach? Are you getting chills or not? So a lot of questions, because what is the doctor trying to do? Doctor is trying to get information, analyze data to understand what has happened. To dig deeper into it, he or she also goes about prescribing some tests, so some blood test or something else, in terms of zeroing down on why it happened. So when we talk about the first 2 steps, remember these are analysis steps, and that's why if you see it says statistics, because it largely talks about reading data, understanding data to know what has happened and why it has happened. However, the next 2 steps are about analytics, right? And now looking at previous data in terms of what has happened and why it has happened, we are talking about what will happen next, which means predictive analytics. Now you are getting into prediction. So for example, last year, after appraisals, the iteration rate increased by 15% or 20%, right? And now if it increased by 15% and 20%, and the reasons people gave for quitting is A and B and C and D and E, and if looking at last year appraisal data and this year appraisal data and whether those reasons were accurate or not, we can predict what would be the iteration rate this year. So if it was 20% last year, it can be 18 or 20% or 18 to 20% this year as well. So we are talking about making a prediction. We are talking about making a prediction of what will happen next, right? And that is where analytics comes into picture. You go about looking into patterns, you getting into trend, and then getting deeper into this. Now you are telling the business you can expect this, right? Not only that, analytics doesn't only stop here, which is awesome, which is cool, because we are talking about predictive analytics. It now gets into another step, which is prescriptive analytics, where we are talking about what should be done or what needs to be done for something to happen. So if you want to reduce the attrition rate from 20% to 12%, then you should do A and B and C and D. And if you go about doing this A and B and C and D, or catering to top 3 reasons for attrition, or catering to top 5 reasons for attrition, whether it's a policy change, whether it's compensation, whether it's growth, whether it's training, whether it's whatever solution, I mean, according to the reasons that obviously that are the reason for attrition. Now you are in a position to suggest the business that this is prescriptive, and which is a solution, which means you're also modeling. So you're not just telling a pattern that last year this happened, so this year this can happen. You are also saying for it not to happen, or for something to happen, or for a particular business result to be achieved, this needs to be done. Prescriptive analytics. Now, this was never the case with HRs. In fact, when people come to me with 20, 25 years of work experience also in HR, when I'm interacting with general manager HRs or VP HRs and director HRs, they have largely executed what the business wanted them to do. They have not really been part of strategy in terms of providing solution to business. They have been part of strategy of what they can do for the business, but that also has been a strategy of largely implementation, not solution, right? But what analytics now brings to the job is the power of providing solutions, right? Very interesting, right? And when we say that HR is changing, analytics is changing the face of HR, that's very, very true. In fact, if we just dig a little deeper into it, traditionally, HR has been administrative focus. It has been focused on execution and implementation. A lot of it has been outsourced across the globe. And a lot of it is also about automating it. So when we talk about the whole idea of personal management, file management, data management, I think that is what the administrative focus has been. And when we talk about larger companies setting the KRA, KPA, KPIs, and reduction in cost and improvement in process efficiency, etc., we are talking about what HRs have gone about executing and implementing. And HR have also been responsible largely for the outsourcing of a lot of work, because insourcing everything means increased cost and difficulty in dealing with business situation. So whether it was outsourcing from Western countries to Asia in terms of call center jobs, where what you would pay in Europe, or what you would pay in uh, Australia, or what you would pay in UK or US, versus what you will pay in India or Philippines, was much less. Maybe with one person's salary you could have had an entire team there, right? But that has been, but it has not only been restricted to outsourcing in terms of work. We are also talking about outsourcing in almost all segments of HR. So a lot of organization, the recruitment is outsourced. There are placement consultants who are working. Background verification is outsourced. Training is outsourced. You are coming to training vendors and they are coming in. So we have largely driven, as HR professionals, we have been upfront in terms of dealing with what we call is outsourcing of HR. And also there has been automation focus. So you have various HRIS, and then you have it started with SAP and Oracle and Siebel and all that, but now you have a lot of cloud-based solutions which are much more easier to do and execute, which makes a lot of sense now. And we are talking about automation focus in terms of that as well. That is how it has been. But largely, if you see, none of this is solving problem for the business. So when we talk about traditional HR, it is still overhead, because tomorrow if a robot comes and does administrative focus and execution and outsourcing and automation, then you are not needed, because, and it's a cost. You're a cost. HR is a cost to company, right? But when we talk about evidence-based HR, and when I say analytics, we are talking about practice of evidence-based HR, right? In fact, I started the presentation by first making you realize that why evidence-based HR is important, because you cannot be gut-based, feeling-based HR alone, right? So when we talk about evidence-based HR, we are talking about going beyond cost saving. It's not about process efficiency only. It is not about saving some cost. It is not about reducing time to do a particular thing. It is beyond that, right? It is of strategic importance, because if iteration is a problem, and if you are able to reduce the iteration rate, if absenteeism is a problem, and if you're able to reduce the absenteeism rate, if offer drop rate, so you have made 100 offers but only 10 people are joining, and offer drop rates is a problem, and you are able to solve that, right? If training effectiveness and efficiency is a problem, and you are able to solve that, right? Then we are talking, if workforce accidents is a reality in your organization, if you're able to solve that right through analytics, then we are talking about you being strategic, because that is what strategy is all about. That is what consulting is all about. That is what solutioning is all about. And that is what analytics is doing. Analytics is driving these aspects, right? And in fact, it is driving aspect is specific to what is working for the company. It is unique solution that you are providing to a company when it comes to evidence-based HR practices. It is not specific to what worked for X organization and Y organization and Z organization, and let's implement that because I think in the industry that's working. No, it is you are finding solution which is unique to the company, and the moment you do that, we are talking about organization having customized solution which is giving it competitive advantage, right? So we are achieving lot more than what is needed, guys. Very, very important, right? and and in fact, when we talk about our analytics certification, this whole journey in various parts of HR, whether it's various verticals of HR is taken, and you understand that what it can do, right? And not only what it can do, because what is still readable and understandable. The bigger question to answer is how you can do. That is very, very important, right? So now when we talk about what is HR analytics doing for the management and for the managers, we are largely talking about uh, HR providing to the management. And when I say executive, I don't mean executive is a wrongly used term in Asia Pacific, Middle East, etc., where executives are largely people who are starting off, right? But when you say executive, the larger context is CEO is the executive, right? Chief Executive Officer, right? So when we say vision for executive, we are largely talking about the top management, the board of directors, etc., right? What are they interested in? So we are providing this as HR analyst. We are providing how people investment is leading to meeting of business objective. Not only that, which people investment is leading to meeting of business objective, and which business objective, and which people investment can lead to better meeting of business objective, right? So we are really drawing a map. So a lot of times we'll just do this and this can happen, and do that and this can happen. These are all based on perception, but we are linking that to reality because we are tracking it and we are suggesting it, and we are providing enough evidence to be able to make more better intelligent decisions about people investment link to business objectives, right? And as we provide things for managers, and when I say managers, I'm talking about first line manager, second line manager, junior management, middle management, senior management, etc. What can we do for that as HR analyst? So we are providing multiple things. We are providing them decision support, we are providing them action alerts, and we are helping them have optimized teams. Now, how are we doing that, right? So when we say decision support, a lot of times they need some kind of input, right, on what can help them lead goals. I mean, it's also important that you understand HRBP a bit in this, because HRBP works very closely with business units in terms of providing that, but HR analytics also does that, right? So different decisions might be needed. For example, what to train, whom to train, right? They may need inputs on the way forward, options that they need to do, right? The approach, business information. So you are providing in one way or the other in terms of decision support. Not only that, we are talking about action alerts. Now, let me give you an example. One of the companies that we were consulting with, and this is a big telecom giant. I can, when we were working with this big telecom giant, we are talking about them wanting to know uh, when will the critical resources leave. So important people, critical resources who are important for the organization, they wanted to know the pattern, right? And they wanted to link it to body language. So we were consulting with them in terms of setting up this whole thing. So we had behavioral consultants who came in and told them about what a interested body language and engaged body language looks like, and what a disengaged body language looks like, and this whole thing. And but that linked to their working and the way they were working in front of desktops and laptops. And then it got linked to software where there was data churning, and it started predicting 3 months before a person would leave, right? And this is action alert. Now, if you go and tell this to a manager saying that a critical resource in your company looks disengaged, I need you to have a word with it and take corrective action or whatever it is, that's a very good action alert that we are talking about, right? So I mean, this is just an example, but there are multiple action alerts that you can go about giving to business in terms of making using this information. And not only that, a lot of times people feel that having bigger teams makes me a bit bigger and a better manager. A lot of times managers take this pride saying that, oh, I lead a team of 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, etc. Right? But I think what is important for organization is to have fit teams, not fat teams, right? And if you're able to give that input to managers, I think in terms of doing workload analysis, in terms of knowing utilization levels, realization levels, etc., you can really help them to manpower planning in a much better way. So you can also go about doing that. So you're not only giving inputs to the management in terms of where to invest, you're also giving inputs to managers in day-to-day thing in terms of dealing with people and understanding people and important information about them, and also important information about work related bits where they are able to make better decisions. Very important input that as HR analyst we are giving, right? In fact, the way we are doing it is by tracking business activity, right? And the way we track business activity is by applying matrix, right? So before I come to matrix, just to give you an idea, what we have done is that we have understood some myths and we have busted them. We have gone about understanding difference between analysis and analytics. We have then gotten and understood what maturity model and HR analytics journey looks like, the 4 steps: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. We have then talked about what it brings to the job in terms of uh, difference between traditional approach and evidence-based approach, where evidence-based approach is giving so much to the business and it's definitely becoming strategic. And now we are talking about its application in terms of what information to provide to the management and also to the managers. And now briefly, I mean, this is a huge topic, I really can't get too much deep into it, but just to give you a generic idea, we are now talking about how do we do it, right? So we do it by tracking business activity, and we do multiple things. I mean, there is a whole journey. A small part of it, but an interesting part of it is applying matrix. So matrix is nothing but measuring a business activity, and then you go about measuring business activity, then you go out looking at patterns, and then you go about finding a lot of things and data and inputs, and then you go about making a decision. But one thing that we need to know that we have to track metrics, and we have to track metrics specific to recruitment, specific to learning, specific to retention, specific to compensation benefit, to workforce planning, to performance management, and to career management. And when we talk about all of this, we are then talking about applying and understanding some metrics and some formulas, and we would now move our focus there, right? So for example, one of the most used metrics, but very easy metric, is revenue per employee, which is total revenue divided by total number of employees. There is another metric which is cost per hire, which is all recruitment and HR staffing cost divided by number of new hires. We are talking about overtime percentage, very important input for a manufacturing or a construction firm, because overtime you pay extra. So overtime pay amount divided by total payroll. Now, tracking this and linking it with other metrics may help you take a call. Should you hire new employee or you keep paying overtime, right? And then for a consulting firm like ours, we are talking about billable hours in terms of number of hours I actually work divided by total hours worked, right? So that is billable hours, right? Very important. We only track billable hours when we are consulting with companies and firms, right? We are also talking about some more interesting metrics like time to productivity. What is time to productivity? So date of new hire hitting the target as per your performance management data minus the new hire start date. Very important for onboarding, very important for talent acquisition, very important for understanding what can lead to job success, etc. But look at this metric, very interesting, because we are talking about a metric which is not in a percentage, which is not in a, it is simple number, because date of new hire hitting the target. So let's say somebody hits a target on 30th of June, but he was hired on March 30th, which means the net time to productivity was about, let's say, 90 days, right? So very interesting, right? So that is time to productivity. Then we have job alignment. Interesting. Imagine we are measuring job alignment. Now, a lot of HRs would never wonder, but imagine measuring this job alignment, which is number of work activities in aligned with the goal of the job divided by all work activities. A lot of times, for example, in sales, you do selling, right? You do appointment taking, but you also train a new hire. Now, training a new hire is not linked to the work activity, right, of sales executive. So when you talk about number of goals aligned exactly versus total number of work and activities that you're doing, we are talking about job alignment. Now, if your job alignment is 80%, 90%, let's say 75%, it's pretty good. But what if your job alignment is 60%, 55%, 40%, which means maybe that is why people are quitting, right? Or maybe you need to enrich the job. So decision on job enrichment, job enlargement, etc., can be made if you know how job alignment is measured, right? So these are very small bits that I'm talking. As I said, that we are big topic that we are talking about. Another very interesting thing is NPS, Net Promoter Score. We would always do it with customers, right? If you go for a car service, they will give you a form and they will pester you to fill 9 and 10. But what's the idea of Net Promoter Score? Net Promoter Score is that in a scale of 0 to 10, if you go and watch a movie, you're a promoter. When are you a promoter? When you start talking to other people. Oh, no, 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 wonderful movie, watch it, it's cool, it's really nice, it's worth it, in fact I can watch it again as well, right? You're promoting the movie, right? You're going to a restaurant and you love the food and you love the price at which you get the food, you will promote it. Oh, let's go there. Yeah, you will take people there, right? So you're a promoter then. So if it's your experience is 9 to 10, and whatever makes that experience is 9 to 10, then you're a promoter. And if it's 7 to 8, then it's a weekend. What did you do on the weekend? Oh, I watched a movie. But you're not actively telling that, oh, I went to this restaurant. Oh, how's the movie? Yeah, it's fine, man. You can watch it once, right? That is a passive. And when are you detractor? When you talk negative about it. Oh, I went to this movie. What a waste of time and money. Yeah. Total waste it is. That's when you're a detractor, right? So it's the same way employees can also be. So one way of looking at employee satisfaction, overall index, I mean, there is a number of things that you can do in terms of tracking employee happiness, but one of the things that you can do is this, where you can go about measuring the Net Promoter Score. What is it? Net Promoter Score is number of promoters minus number of detractors divided by total number of respondents. So for example, if we are talking about total promoters to be 4,400, then 4,400 minus 100, which is 4,300, divided by 5,000, right? Which is about 86%, which is okay, right? 80 and above is fine, right? 90 and above is great, but anything below 80 is considered from an NPS scale is fine. So you're just doing fine, right? Or you're doing good maybe, right? So you know how exactly this can also work in and where you can link it in terms of employee satisfaction, job satisfaction, and you can take it if you know how this metric works. I'm just looking at introducing you to a few metrics so that you find it interesting, right? In fact, a lot of times it's not about metrics that exist. In fact, it's a matrix keeps on changing also, right? And a lot of times, based on business situation, you may have to create new metrics as well. For example, when we talk about employee engagement, and when we talk about how would you link performance with employee engagement, creating a metric, which is very, very interesting. So how will you measure performance for an employee considering the contribution of employee engagement? uh, this is the metric that you may have to create. So what can lead to performance is that then you have to create a formula. Okay, what leads to performance? Okay, somebody having the skill or the ability means the person can perform. Great. So ability is important. What else is important, right? Uh, a able person has to be supported, right? If the person is not supported, then he or she cannot really perform. So support is important, but is support and ability enough? Motivation is also needed. The person should connect, should be happy with the culture, etc. So motivation should be there. So if a able person with good support and good motivation, you can say that it creates formula of performance, right? So sometimes you may have to create, depending on what you are looking at measuring, what are you looking at catering, what are you looking at covering, right? You may have to go about creating this as well, because otherwise, yeah, if you talk about, let's say, only performance, then let's say you can say that ability plus commitment is enough, but is it really enough, right? So that is something that, but we are seeing it from employee engagement perspective. So we are looking at motivation levels, because if motivation is there, the person is happy in the job, the culture is good, that's causing motivation, then we are talking about uh, ER being measured, or that component being seen in measuring of performance. Very, very interesting, right? We have to go about creating metrics as well. So it's not only about existing formulas that is there, it is much more than that, right? Now, when we talk about solving a problem using HR analytics, very interesting case, guys. Very, very interesting. We were part of this. And when we say solving a case, when we talk about this, then we had an organization called ABC Corporation, which was leading to loss in productivity because of absenteeism. We were talking about absenteeism rates were about 7.2% compared to the acceptable limits of 2.5 to 3.5%, right? And it's almost more than twice, right? Such big absenteeism rate was happening. So the idea was to analyze and understand and solve this problem of high absenteeism, right? So the way to first approach it is look at data, collect this data, apply metrics, and you can apply metrics in phases and make it more specific and much more targeted. So for example, first you need to go at measuring absenteeism. So absenteeism is measured by total absent days divided by total number of work days worked by workforce into 100. So for example, let's say if there are 10 employees and each one of them have taken 1 day leave, then total absent days is 10 days, right? And the company is working for 22 days in a month. So these 10 employees working 22 days in a month, technically, I mean, total number of work days that were there is 10 to 22, which is 220. So absenteeism is 10 divided by 220 into 100. Now, this is just for your understanding. It doesn't mean this matches 7.2, but largely you understand that this is how absenteeism is being calculated. But then absenteeism can be further calculated specific to departments, specific to managers, specific to shifts, whatever the situation be. And once that calculation is done, you understand what is causing, where it's causing, which kind of job role is causing, etc., etc., etc. And you can then also go about looking at employee surveys, leave surveys, etc., and collect some data. And when you mix all this and you bring all this together, you get to know the reasons why people are quitting. So once you get deeper into it and analyze it, you realize that there are people who are taking leaves for following reasons, right? Now, reasons are 40% of them are taking because of personal illness, right? 21% is taking because of family issues. 20% is taking because of personal needs. 14% is taking it because of entitlement mentality, and 5% is taking it because of stress, right? Because of stress, right? Now, if we talk about all these reasons, right, now you have idea of what the iteration levels are specific to department, everything. You have also clear idea because of analysis of why the 100% of absenteeism is happening. So now what the organization did was that it started linking and prioritizing various things to solve the problems. For example, first thing it did was that based on they were already doing a lot of employee engagement activities, but they started prioritizing the budgets for initiatives which were addressing one of these. So for example, let's say there was doctor on campus, and doctor on campus was coming once a month. Now, personal illness is one of the reasons, so they made it once a week. Maybe they had some kind of health activity like yoga or something that was happening, but that was happening once a day, once a week, or twice a week. They made it daily, right? It can be anything. I mean, it can be anything that was already happening. You made it more because you wanted people to participate more, right? Not only that, you also thought of new employee engagement initiatives which were directly in line with the reason for absenteeism. So for example, if let's say for family issues, a lot of women employees, especially in the age group of 28 to 35, are missing work because they have to look at children as well, you started tying up with daycare or having a daycare around so that they are able to then attend office because they can leave the kids at daycare, right? So you started talking about new initiatives. Maybe for personal illness, you started talking about coming up with desktop yoga and other things which may work, or something other that is connected to that, right? And you started taking those initiatives. In fact, not only that, you also introduced new policies. For example, what this organization did was there was entitlement mentality. What is entitlement mentality? Okay, you have 12 days of sick leave. Now, the leave is meant for you to take when you are sick, but then nobody feels like that. I'm entitled for sick leave. So whether I'm sick or not, I will exhaust all my leaves, right? So a lot of organizations try controlling it using the stick approach, which means they would They would tell the business, they would tell to come up with a policy where make it difficult to take leaves, get medical certificate, etc., all that. But what this organization did is that they followed the carrot approach. So what they said that, okay, I'm sure that there would be mathematics that would have gone behind it in terms of loss of productivity versus what they would do. But they came up and they made all leaves that were there in terms of sick leaves were made earned leaves, which means if you take that leave, you actually lose money. But if you don't take that leave, you get money, right? So now people started taking less leaves, right? Similarly, you ran also some programs specific to work-life balance. You may came up with some policy change in terms of flexible work timings so that there is less of stress, etc. And then finally, they were able to reduce the absenteeism from 7.2% to 3.8%. Though acceptable was 2.5 to 3.5, they almost reduced it by half, which is huge, which is good. Look at what analytics has done. Analytics has now gone about looking at a problem, taking it head on, collect data, drive evidence-based HR practices, figure it out, link things between each other, drive strategies, drive policies, drive initiatives, and actually reduce it. So entire solution cycle from problem to entire solution. And I'm sure for the next year, they would have done even better when they could reduce it so much. I'm sure another cycle they would be in what was acceptable for the by them, right? So this is how analytics is changing things in the industry today. Very important for us to understand, right? That this whole cycle that we are talking about of describing, diagnosing, and predicting and prescribing is seen in this case because you first expand and you understand and then you diagnose and then you link it with something and then you implement certain things and then you also prescribe new solutions and then you go about doing that and then you find a solution which works for the organization, right? Isn't this interesting? Isn't this exciting? Isn't this strategic? Do you think people who would be able to provide this solution, what do you think organization would do with them? It would reward them, they would pay them, they would promote them, they would hire them. And that is what is happening with HR analytics. So if this fear is there for people that no, HR analytics is not my cup of tea, it is some random mathematics and some programming. No, that's not true, guys. It is not happening on that, right? You are learning simple tools like representative tools. You are learning Tableau. You're learning maybe Power BI. You are doing basic maths. But not only that, you're learning the journey of analytics, right? And understanding what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, best data practices, refining of data, understanding of patterns, looking at how exactly the whole thing works. It completely changes. It's a game changer, and it is to HR, right? Think of it. HR has always been cost, but this makes them no cost because anybody who provides solution to business and anybody which helps business achieve objectives and achieve goals is cannot be cost alone. It is definitely a strategic function, and analytics brings that on the table and it brings that across, which makes it fascinating, guys. Very, really interesting, right? And in fact, if you look at the data that we have, organizations spending $1 in analytics are getting $13 in return, right? I mean, this is like awesome. Imagine 1300% returns. So if they are putting in one dirham and €1 or $1 or ₹1, they are getting 13 back in return, which is really awesome, right? So this is where the future of HR lies. This is where the next gen HR would function on, work on. And that is what brings me to this very interesting thing that I have to offer to all of you, which is certification in HR analytics. Very, very well done certification. A lot of thought, a lot of experience has gone into it. It is one of our premier certification as CHRMP. In fact, so much time that goes in terms of not only doing this, but also preparing it and bettering it. The way our team works, it's really awesome. We are talking about this being a wholesome HR analytics certification where right from workshop to capstone project to exposure to tools to a global validation is given to you, right? And when we talk about what you cover in workshop, you cover you introduce the topic, you understand differences like people analytics and HR analytics and workforce analytics, how it is different, and you understand how HR business partner, where does HR analytics actually fit in and what exactly they're doing, and you understand concepts like internal data and external data, a lot of other things, and then you get into analytics models and maturity model. Briefly we discussed, but that's not the only model. There are multiple models. You have Gartner model, SAP model, you have Deloitte model, you have capability review model, a lot of things that you go about doing. You go about learning that, and then you get into topic wise, where you learn talent acquisition analytics, you learn TA trends, you solve a beautiful case study of Google, you learn AI in analytics, and you learn data mining and some metrics and segmentation and its impact. And then you get into workload analytics, one of my favorite topics, where you learn lead time analytics, you learn utilization time, realization time, reducing manpower cost optimization. We use something called staggered shift approach. It was like that whole case study is mind blowing, very very interesting, right? And then we get into KPI and performance management analytics. Again, something very interesting. You do best analytics, you do BSC, you do lead and lag, you understand cascading effects and all that. Again, very very slightly conceptual, but very very important integral part of understanding what analytics is all about. And then you do talent development analytics, where it's triangulation, RTCA. We introduce you to a tool called Results Lab, a Kirkpatrick L3 tool. Very interesting, right? Again, and you do ROI calculation, you do BSC Connect in succession planning, you do performance potential map charting, how analytics drive succession planning, 3 methodology, you learn attrition rates, absenteeism rates, you learn employee life cycle mapping, you learn ELTV, which is also a very interesting concept. We are talking about compensation analytics, something very new in analytics, but very important. And we are talking about creating pay grades, pay structure, and how you link competencies against pay grades, and how do you go about JDs, linking it through to a point system to come up with those points, and how you create pay parity using analytics. Very very interesting. And again, one of my favorite topics of KPI and data and matrix, where some statistical tools are taught, some matrix is taught, and all this is something that is brought on table. And we are then talking about Tableau as a tool, which you go about learning right from an Tableau expert, and then you completely go about covering all this, which makes so much sense, right? You know how exactly best of dashboards are created, how their data is represented. Beautiful. I mean, Tableau dashboards are the most beautiful looking things that you will see. You'll feel proud. In fact, a lot of times what we see that people create a dashboard which is giving a lot of information, but they keep bettering it because they love the color combination and this and that, and they want to play around with it. So beautiful tool that Tableau is, right? And then you get into validation, where we are talking about certification exam, and then you being certified by CHRMP and Pearson View, and you get a digital badge which works beautifully well. Link it to your LinkedIn profile, get 20% more hits to for the job searches that we are talking about. A unique certification code, verifiable certification code, and a certificate of achievement is something that you get. Look at what Mukund works for Amazon. He had to say about the certification. We are talking about Joanna works for United Nations, but she had to talk about CHRMP certification. These are all our alumni that we are talking about.